There was something about Earl that made people look away. Maybe it was his limp, his trembling hands, or the way his faded suit hung on him like a memory he couldn't let go of. Most customers at Maple Lane Diner ordered, ate, and left without sparing him a second glance. But Amina noticed everything. She always did. The way his fingers shook when he tried to open a sugar packet. The way he whispered thank you like it was a prayer. The way his cloudy blue eyes softened when she set his cup down just right so he wouldn't spill. People came and went, laughing, scrolling, living fast. Earl moved like a man who had lived too long in silence. And every morning, without fail, Amina brought him warm oatmeal even when he insisted on paying for eggs, because she knew he couldn't chew them anymore, despite his pride. She set his spoon gently in his hand, steadied his coffee cup for him, and asked about his day as if he were the most important customer in the room. He never said much, only small stories. A porch swing he once sat on with someone he loved, a career in a company that doesn't exist anymore, and a son he hadn't spoken to in years. The other waitresses called her crazy. Why waste time on him? His tips are coins, they said, tossing hair and gum and loud laughter. But Amina didn't care about coins. She cared about people. She had been raised by a grandmother who always said the same thing. Kindness is a seed, planted even in stone. One day it'll bloom where nobody expects. When Earl coughed, it shook his frail chest like a storm inside old brittle branches. She always brought him an extra napkin and rubbed his back with a tenderness that surprised even her sometimes. He would blink fast, swallowing emotion he didn't want anyone to see. "You remind me of my daughter," he whispered once. Amina smiled, but his words sat heavy in her chest all day like a song she couldn't finish. She never asked what happened to his daughter. She didn't want to press a wound. Meanwhile, customers scrolled on their phones complaining about slow service, never noticing the tiny miracle happening in booth 6, an old forgotten man being treated like someone worth remembering. If you're watching this real quick, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story to support more inspiring content. All right, let's continue. One rainy Tuesday, Amina noticed Earl wasn't sitting in his usual booth. She checked the time. 7:42 a.m. He was never late. Her stomach tightened, and she scanned the diner door every time the bell chimed. When her manager called her to take table 3, she barely heard him. Something in her gut whispered a warning. She finished her shift with a knot in her chest and walked home soaked in mist and worry. Her tiny apartment had peeling paint and a stubborn leaking faucet, but she didn't complain. She worked double shifts, saved every dollar, and dreamed of nursing school one day. Still, that night she barely touched her rice and beans. She kept staring at the door like Earl might knock, saying he'd just overslept, but he didn't come the next morning, or the next. On the 4th day, she couldn't take it. She asked around town, visited the library where he sometimes read newspapers, even called the hospital pretending to be family. Nothing. Amina felt foolish, crying in the break room, clutching a tissue, whispering, "Come on, old man, where are you?" The other waitresses rolled eyes. "He's probably dead," one said casually. Amina flinched like the words slapped her. But something deep in her spirit said no, Earl wasn't gone. He couldn't be. She hadn't finished thanking him for something she didn't yet understand. A week later, just when her heart began to ache like morning, the diner door opened and a chill swept through the room. Not from the cold outside, but from what entered. 4 towering men in black suits stepped in first, sunglasses on indoors, shoulders like brick walls, scanning the room like predators. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Forks froze mid-air. The bell above the door jingled again, softer this time, and a man in a dark gray 3-piece suit stepped in behind them. He looked like power, like wealth, like secrets. He carried a leather folder in one hand and walked with the confident stillness of someone accustomed to being obeyed. The bodyguards formed a cold wall around him as they moved toward the counter. Amina's breath hitched, but she kept wiping a table, forcing her hands not to shake. Her manager rushed out from the kitchen, wiping sauce from his apron and stuttering a greeting. The suited man didn't greet anyone. His eyes were sharp and icy as he scanned the booths one by one, until they landed on the empty booth where Earl always sat. Amina saw his jaw flex. Something flickered behind his expression. Not grief, but something darker. Regret? Guilt? He stepped forward, voice smooth but dangerous. "Who is the waitress that served a man named Earl Thompson here every morning?" The diner froze. Amina's heart stopped in her chest. She swallowed and stepped forward. "I did." The room seemed to exhale in shock. The man's eyes moved over her. Not cruelly, but calculating, like he was studying her soul. Then he nodded once to a bodyguard, who produced a sealed envelope and placed it in her trembling hand. "Mr. Thompson passed away," the man said quietly. The world tilted. The clatter of a dropped fork echoed like thunder. Amina couldn't breathe. Passed away. Passed away. The word slammed inside her skull, refusing to settle. Her throat burned. Her fingers shook uncontrollably around the envelope. But before she could speak, the man continued, "He left instructions, and we are here to execute them." Heads turned. Whispers slithered across the diner. The envelope felt heavy, heavier than paper should feel, as though it carried weight far beyond ink. Amina's chest tightened and tears blurred her vision. The suited man spoke again, voice solemn. "He wanted you notified first, and privately." Suddenly he snapped his fingers and the bodyguards formed a perimeter around her, blocking every curious eye. Now it felt like she wasn't just holding an envelope. She was holding a secret big enough to change everything. Her pulse hammered. "Why me?" she whispered. The man studied her like a puzzle piece that finally made sense. "Because," he said slowly, "you showed him what humanity looks like when the world forgets." Tears streamed down her face. She hadn't expected gratitude, let alone this. She just wanted Earl safe, fed, seen. But fate, it seemed, had been watching. The lawyer leaned forward. "Miss Amina," he said softly, "nothing in your life is going to be the same after today." And before she could answer, before she could breathe, before she could even think, he added something that made the entire diner gasp loud enough to shake the windows. "Mr. Thompson wasn't who you thought he was." The diner seemed to stop breathing. The hiss of the coffee machine faded. The fluorescent lights above flickered softly. The air thickened like a storm cloud forming in the silence. Not who she thought he was. Amina felt the words cling to her skin like cold rain. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. The lawyer lifted his hand, motioning for calm, but calm wasn't possible anymore. Not when 4 bodyguards surrounded her like she was suddenly someone the world needed to protect. The other waitresses stared, their mouths hanging open, mascaraed lashes blinking like they couldn't believe the girl they ignored every day was now the center of an earthquake none of them saw coming. The lawyer continued, voice low, controlled, practiced in delivering shocks. "Earl Thompson was not just an old man who sat in a diner," he said. "He was the founder and majority shareholder of Thompson Global Holdings." Gasps rippled through the room. The name hit the air like thunder. Even the manager choked. Thompson Global Holdings, everyone knew that name. The multinational corporation that owned shipping lines, tech patents, skyscrapers. The name plastered on banks, hospitals, colleges. A global empire. Amina blinked. The old man who struggled with sugar packets. The man she spooned oatmeal for. He built that. Her knees threatened to buckle. The lawyer continued, each word carving deeper shock. He lived simply by choice these last few months. He came here every morning because he felt peace here. A soft sound escaped her, half cry, half breath, peace. She had given him that without even knowing. The lawyer placed a second envelope on the table. "He asked me to hand-deliver this to you, and to explain privately what comes next." Before she could respond, the manager stumbled forward. "Sir, maybe we can—" He didn't finish. A bodyguard stepped forward just enough to silence him. Amina felt every eye in the diner burn into her. Curiosity trying to claw its way through the wall of black suits. Her heart hammered painfully. "Where is he?" she whispered at last, voice raw like it scraped against her ribs on the way out. The lawyer's cold composure cracked for a moment. His jaw tightened, grief flickering in his eyes. "St. Mary's Medical Center," he said softly. He passed peacefully. "He asked for you." Pain stabbed her chest. She had prayed he wasn't gone. Now every morning she brought him oatmeal felt like a goodbye she hadn't known she was saying. Tears welled again, but she blinked them away hard. No, she wouldn't fall apart. Not yet. The lawyer nodded to his men, who shifted, creating a path to the door. "Miss Amina, we need you to come with us." The diner erupted. Whispers, shock, jealousy, speculation swirling like wind in a storm. The manager tried to protest, something about her shift. But one look from a bodyguard shut him up. Amina wiped her hands on her apron, chest tight. Then she removed it slowly, folded it, and set it on the counter. She had worn that apron through exhaustion. Double shifts, grease burns, rude customers. Dreams whispered into cracked tiles. Leaving it behind felt like shedding a skin she had outgrown without realizing. As she stepped through the diner, everyone stared at her. Not as the quiet waitress who moved like a shadow, but like someone chosen by fate. The bell above the door chimed as she stepped outside into a black SUV waiting at the curb, windows tinted, engine humming low like a guarded secret. The door closed behind her with a soft thud that sounded final. A chapter ending, a new one rising. The city blurred past as they drove. Gray buildings, street vendors, bus stops, stray dogs, kids running through puddles. Life continuing without knowing one of its quietest souls had just stepped into a world she never imagined. Her fingers tightened around the envelope. She still hadn't opened it. Fear and disbelief tangled inside her like vines choking her breath. The lawyer sat beside her, silent for a moment, then spoke in a tone too gentle for someone so powerful. "You were the only person who treated him like a human being, not a wallet, not a relic," he said. "You reminded him of who he used to be." Amina stared at her reflection in the window. Wide eyes, trembling mouth, a girl raised on struggle, now sitting in a luxury car like she belonged. "I didn't do anything special," she whispered. The lawyer shook his head. "In a world like this, kindness is the rarest currency." They pulled into a private hospital entrance. Security guards nodded. Doors slid open silently. The hallway smelled like antiseptic and endings. He guided her into a private waiting room, quiet and dim, then motioned toward the envelope. "You should open it." Her hands trembled as she tore the seal. A letter slipped out. Shaky handwriting she recognized instantly. "Amina," it began. Her breath caught. "Thank you for seeing me when the world forgot. You reminded me of my daughter. I failed her. But I hope in caring for me you healed a piece of what I broke." Tears spilled silently down Amina's cheeks, blurring the words. "Inside this letter you will find something unexpected. Do not refuse it. I watched you, the way you work, the dreams behind your eyes. You deserve a life where your heart has space to breathe." A check fell from the paper. Amina froze. Her body turned to stone. It wasn't $100, not 1,000, not 10,000, $250,000. Her knees almost gave out. The room spun. She grabbed the chair for support. The lawyer didn't look surprised. He simply waited, patient as though he had seen this moment break and build countless lives. The letter continued. "This is only the beginning. My legal team has instructions that concern you. Trust them. And do not let this world make you small again." There was more, a shaky final line that shattered her. "You made an old man feel human again. That is the greatest wealth in this world." The letter slipped from her trembling fingers. She cried then, silently, uncontrollably. Not because of the money, but because of the weight of being seen, truly seen, in a life where she had become accustomed to invisibility. When she finally looked up, the lawyer nodded solemnly. "He left more than that," he said quietly. "Much more." Amina's breath caught. "What do you mean?" His eyes held hers, steady, knowing. "Earl Thompson's estate is valued at $4.8 billion. The number detonated inside her like fire. 4.8 billion. Her vision swam. "What does that have to do with me?" she whispered. The lawyer leaned forward. "He changed his will 3 days before he died." Silence swallowed the room whole. "Why?" Amina whispered, voice barely there. The lawyer's answer cut the air clean open. "Because you're the only person he trusted at the end of his life." Her breath shattered in her chest. His next words came slow, heavy, earth-shifting. "Miss Amina, you are the primary beneficiary." Her heartbeat stopped, then thundered. The world tilted violently. She was no longer standing in a diner. She was standing on the edge of a life she never imagined. A waitress yesterday, something else entirely today. The lawyer held her gaze. "You own 56% of Thompson Global Holdings now." The floor might as well have disappeared beneath her. The air felt too thin, the walls too close, everything too surreal. Before she could speak, the door burst open. A woman stood there, elegant, furious, grief-stricken, red eyes burning like embers. Behind her, security tried to stop her, but she pushed through. "You," she hissed, pointing at Amina like a blade. "What did you do to my father?" The room froze. Amina's heart slammed against her ribs. Father? This was his daughter, the one he missed, the one he mourned quietly over oatmeal and coffee. Now she stood there like a storm about to consume everything. The woman stepped closer, eyes wild with pain and accusation. "That fortune belongs to me," she spat. "And I will burn the world down before I let you take it." The lawyer rose, calm but tense. Security closed in. Amina stood trembling, clutching Earl's letter against her chest. The daughter's voice trembled. Not rage now, but heartbreak leaking through her fury. "He had no one but me," she whispered, tears flooding. "Why? Why would he choose you?" Amina's throat tightened. She didn't know. She didn't understand it either. But before she could speak, the lawyer answered quietly, firmly, like truth itself stepping between them. "Because she gave him something you never did." The daughter froze. The room held its breath. The lawyer spoke the final words like a verdict. Love without conditions. And just like that, the war for a billionaire's legacy and a waitress's future had officially begun. The room vibrated with tension so sharp it felt like it could slice the walls open. The air tasted like metal, like grief and power colliding. Earl's daughter stood frozen, chest heaving. Mascara smudged like storm clouds under her eyes. Amina clutched the letter as if letting go would erase everything. The diner, the oatmeal, the trembling hands that once thanked her. The lawyer's words still echoed in the air. Love without conditions. They were a knife and a bomb all at once. Amina didn't feel like a billionaire. She felt like a girl who once counted coins to buy milk, who braided her little brother's hair in the morning before school, who prayed for tips just to make rent. And yet here she was, caught between a world she knew and a world that wasn't built for her. Earl's daughter stepped closer, fists clenched, shaking with anger. Or was it fear? "My father gave you everything," she whispered like it hurt to breathe. "And you took him from me." Amina's voice trembled. "I didn't take anything, I just cared." The daughter laughed, bitter and broken. "Cared?" she spat. "He was a billionaire. People have been caring around him my whole life." Her voice cracked. "Except me, right?" Tears streaked down her face now in angry rivers. The lawyer lifted a hand, protective. "Miss Thompson, your father tried to reach you." Her jaw clenched. "He didn't try hard enough." Behind her, the bodyguards shifted, uncertain whether to intervene or give space to grief drowning in pride. Amina swallowed hard. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "For your loss. For everything." But the daughter shook her head violently. "No, you don't get to be sorry. You don't get to stand here and inherit a legacy built over 40 years. Each word struck like hail. "You're nobody." The blow landed, cruel and real. Amina felt it like a punch to the ribs, not because it was true, but because she had heard words like that her whole life in whispers and in systems and in tired eyes. But this time she didn't shrink. She looked at Earl's daughter, really looked, and saw something behind the rage. Loneliness, fear, a child unloved by a man who didn't know how to stay present after he lost everything that mattered. A child who learned power was armor. Amina spoke softly. "He told me you reminded him of his wife. Not in the way you think. In the strength. In the fire. A flicker, shock, pain." The daughter's face twisted. "Don't talk about her." "He loved her," Amina continued gently. "And he missed you every day." The daughter's shoulders shook, but she refused to break. "Then why didn't he show it?" The lawyer answered quietly, pain deep in his tone. "Grief makes cowards of men sometimes. He never forgave himself for failing her. And then he failed you too." Silence swallowed everything. Not peace, the heavy silence that comes when truth lays bare what pride tries to hide. The daughter's lips trembled, but she held her head high. "I'll contest the will." The lawyer nodded, expecting it. "You have the right." She turned to Amina, eyes burning. "I'll ruin you." Amina's voice steadied, something strengthening inside her like roots gripping earth. "You can try." One of the bodyguards blinked, surprised at the steel in her tone. The daughter scoffed, shook with fury, then spun and stormed out, heels echoing like collapsing pillars. Security followed. The door shut behind her and the room exhaled, but Amina didn't. She felt like she was standing on a cliff with the ground shifting beneath her. The lawyer softened his voice. She is hurting. This will be painful, but Earl trusted you for a reason. Amina wiped her cheeks. I don't know if I can do this. He didn't look away. People like you don't realize how rare they are. That's why the world underestimates you, until it doesn't. She swallowed the lump in her throat. What now? Now, he said, you learn. The next weeks were a whirlwind. Meetings in towering glass offices where people stared at her with confusion, doubt, curiosity. Her old co-workers texted, stunned by news headlines. Waitress inherits billion-dollar empire. Mystery beneficiary of business giant. Photographers camped near her apartment. She stayed inside and prayed, unsure if she belonged in this new world or would choke trying to breathe its air. The lawyer, Daniel, she learned, guided her through it. Patiently, steadily. She saw numbers and stock charts and corporate structures that made her dizzy. But she also saw something else. A company that once belonged to a man who sat alone every morning, forgotten by the world he built. And she thought of her grandmother's voice. Kindness is a seed. Even in stone it blooms. One morning she stood in front of the board, men in tailored suits, skeptical eyes judging her. One cleared his throat. Miss Amina, with respect, you have no experience. She held his gaze. You're right. I don't, but Earl chose me. Maybe he saw something you don't. It wasn't arrogance. It was truth spoken from a life of being overlooked. Another board member leaned forward. Why would he choose you? Because when he had nothing left to offer the world, she said quietly, I still treated him like he mattered. The room didn't applaud, but something shifted. A breath held by history released just slightly. Over the following months, she didn't pretend to know everything. She asked. She studied. She worked harder than anyone expected. She visited Earl's grave once a week, leaving a small cup of coffee beside his headstone, the way she did at the diner. And slowly, the world began to see her not as a waitress who got lucky, but as a woman building her place with humility and grit. Yet the storm hadn't passed. Earl's daughter returned, not with lawyers this time, but alone, outside the office one late evening. She looked smaller without anger, fragile. I'm not here to fight, she said. Exhaustion lined her voice. Amina nodded once. Okay. The daughter swallowed. I hated you. Amina didn't flinch. I know. A long silence settled. He was all I had, she whispered. Even if he didn't know how to love me right. Tears filled her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. I thought you stole him. Amina's voice was gentle. I didn't steal him, I just saw him. The daughter looked away. I never learned how. Amina stepped closer. We still can. The daughter blinked, startled. We? Amina offered a small, tentative smile. His legacy shouldn't divide us. It should fix what life broke. The daughter's chin quivered. Why would you want anything to do with me? Because he loved you, Amina said softly, even if he didn't say it right. And because love isn't a limited resource. A tear finally fell down the daughter's cheek. She whispered, I don't want the money anymore. Amina shook her head. This isn't about money. It's about healing. Then she did something that stunned the world when it made headlines weeks later. She offered the daughter a seat on the board. Equal voice. Equal respect. Not because she needed to, but because mercy was power too. The daughter stared at her, stunned, as if seeing her for the first time not as an enemy, but as someone who offered another chance at a life not driven by bitterness. He was right about you, she whispered. You are different. Amina smiled softly. Different can change the world, and she did. The company didn't just grow, it transformed. Programs for senior care, mental health support for grieving families, scholarships for hospitality workers, free meals for elders in diners across the country, named the Earl Initiative. People smiled. People cried. People remembered an old man who once sat alone and a waitress who saw him. Years later, at a charity gala in a sky-high ballroom, someone asked Amina what her secret to success was. Cameras flashed. People leaned in. She laughed gently, humble as always. I just treated someone kindly when it cost me nothing, she said. Turns out that was worth everything. Across the room, the daughter, now a friend, lifted her glass in silent gratitude. A legacy repaired, a heart healed, a life transformed not by wealth but by compassion. And somewhere in the universe, if souls could smile, Earl did. The forgotten old man, the powerful founder, the father who failed and tried to fix what time almost wiped away. A waitress who planted kindness in stone and watched it grow into an empire rooted in humanity. Not luck, not fate, just a choice. One small act, one morning, one bowl of oatmeal, and a heart big enough to change everything.